think I didn't set my recording button here. Okay. All right. Well, I forgot to start the recording here. So I've just started it. So I'll have to redo my introduction here, which is that this is the CNPS, John Chappell Natural Philosophy Society Science Chat. And you all are joining us a little bit late since I forgot to press the record button. But I'm your host, Franklin Hu, and we are discussing T.T. Brown's work on electrogravitics from this book, The Secrets of Antigravity Propulsion. So we're just looking at lifter technology. And definitely it does seem to work. But the question is, does it work in vacuum or not? And, you know, there are conflicting reports on that. So, let's see here. Now they have some other examples of experiments that they've done here. And you can see these are like simple saucer shapes here. And they're claiming that they were able to get actual levitation of the object heavier than the original weight of the object. So let's see here. We're on page about 100 here, and a lot of this is still on T.T. Brown's work. So on chapter 4 here, they start trying to explain how these things work. So this is called an etheric explanation. That these effects are easier to explain with the use of a theory. The use of an ether. So here's a quote here. So it's from the standpoint of this new physics, modern physics concepts used in the conventional world, such as relativity theory, quantum electrodynamics, and quantum mechanics, are referred to as classical concepts. That is, they are regarded as terribly outdated. And here's an interesting paragraph. According to Ray, unlike today's classical physics, the new physics does not begin with physical observables in developing its treatment of physical phenomena. Rather, it postulates the existence of an underlying reality consisting of an inherently unobservable subtle substance called an ether, which fills all of space. Then it defines all of its fundamental quantities at that subphysical level. Physical observables then emerge as mathematical solutions to equations defined in terms of these more basic processes. This new physics regards time and space as absolutes and views Einstein's notion of relative time and space as fundamentally incorrect. Physically observable phenomena such as length contraction and clock retardation, which relativists normally interpret as alterations of the space-time continuum, emerge as manifestations resulting from motion through the absolute ether. Thus, the ether concept, so long spurred by the academic establishment, turns out to be central to this highly classified new physics. And he's interviewing some guy he calls Ray, but his actual identity has been hidden to keep his identity safe. So that's something saying that, okay, that there is this new physics, that there is an ether, and that everything is based on that ether, and that Einstein's concepts of space-time and relative time are in fact completely incorrect. So I would think that that would hit a chord with a lot of us dissident scientists who say that Einstein's wrong, blah blah blah, but don't have a lot of detail on that. So let's see. Your pal had a question. Is there any indication here of perpetual motion, about which Robert J. Hilster said that the universe, including the solar system, is a perpetual motion machine for all practical purposes? Well, in the book, they mentioned this concept that they're trying to make machines which are over unity, meaning that they extract more power out than they are using. But last week we had Jeff Cook here, who had a concept of perpetual motion, like the solar system being a perpetual motion machine, and that was in fact his entire point, saying that kind of thing is in fact a perpetual motion machine. So if the moon just continuously rotates around the Earth and never stopping, then that is a form of perpetual motion. And Powell's asking, are we in conference mode or are microphones all muted? Generally speaking, all your microphones are muted, but if you want to speak, you need to go and unmute yourself. On the lower left, there should be a little microphone icon, and you need to click that in order to speak. And so this is an open conversation. So if you have a question or want to make a comment, then you can go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can be like Powell and just put something in the chat box, and we'll talk about it. And
so Franklin, I've got my model here, my lifter. If you want, I can show it.
Yeah, you got your camera there? Okay, I see your UCam opening link there. It says, please start your cam. Have you started your cam?
Yes. Oh, there it goes.
There you are.
So it's a simple triangle with foil and a wire around the top. I don't know if you can see the wire.
Yeah, we can see the wire, but you have to lift up your lifter a little bit higher so it's in the camera. You have to put it over your face, right? So what are you using for the legs there? That seems like a fairly heavy construction.
It's they're wooden, pieces of wood. And then there's, I use straws for the angles with, if I can show that on there, in the interior.
On the insides?
There's pieces of straw with the angle part on it, and then the wood, and then, so it might have been too heavy.
Yeah, those are solid wood dowels, the ones that I've seen that was constructed out of like toothpick kind of things. And your wire is all curly. Is there a reason for that?
It's the finest wire I had on hand. Anyway, the voltage supply was 25,000 volts. I just checked that also.
So how much does that thing move around? Did it just kind of wiggle around?
It jumped a little bit, kind of like this.
Jumped a little bit?
Yeah.
Now, for
it's kind of dirty and dusty right now.
Now, I have a Van de Graaff generator. Definitely, you turn on a Van de Graaff generator, you put stuff around it, and things are definitely being attracted to that. They have like a discharge ball, and when you're discharging the sparks, I mean, you can physically feel it, pulling and pushing. There's a lot of course, in that case, there's really no question what the force there. The force involved in that would just be simply the electrostatic force of the opposite charges, definitely attracting things. So that is definitely one kind of force that we know about, which is the electrostatic force. But these lifter experiments are trying to create basically a one-way kind of thrusting force. Because it's easy enough to get like two things to stick together, like getting two magnets to stick together, and you can, one magnet will definitely attract and pull the other. But can you just get a situation where you have a singular thing like one magnet, and then somehow have it just continuously be driven off in one direction without there being any reactionary force? One of the they typically call these things like reactionless drives. And one of the more recent attempts, there's this then called like the EM drive. It's basically a microwave horn. Would be one of the more recent attempts on this that I've heard. But I'm not sure that even that produced any real excitement about this electrogravitic propulsion here. So apparently, according to this book, we already know how to do this stuff. It's just that this is all black ops stuff that is being held back from us. So the only hope would be for one of us dissident scientists to replicate these things, because apparently the man is not going to let us have this stuff. But this is all, this whole section here is about what Townsend thought of ether physics. So here's his quote. He says, "For certain phenomenon, it is desirable and almost necessary to assume the existence of an ether in order to evolve a satisfactory explanation. An example is the force of gravitation, particularly the electrogravitational effects, but the phenomenon of the movement of a dielectric is such an example. Much of the work is based on facts derived from actual experiments which cannot be satisfactorily explained without the existence of an ether process possessing substantially these qualities." So Brown thinks that that's certainly required. So in Chapter 5, they have a section called the U.S. Antigravity Squadron. Okay, so this whole section is about if the United States did in fact develop this technology, then of course the skeptic's question is, and where is it? Where do we see that? So the assertion in this book is that we see that technology actually in the B-2 bomber. So there's a lovely picture of the B-2 bomber. And the assertion is that the B-2 bomber is in fact a kind of electrogravitic airplane. So they're showing that they're charging the plane up so that it has a positive leading edge, and while it spits out negative ions out the back. So that is one interesting idea, that how do you generate the very, very high voltage difference that would be needed to achieve these effects. And the idea is that you have a jet engine and you have it blowing through an electrode, and basically that strips the electrons out and puts them out into the exhaust stream, which creates a very, very high charge. You're basically pumping out all the electrons from the plane, and that will create a very, very high differential charge. This is similar to, say, how a Van de Graaff generator works, where you have a rotating belt which takes charges from one place to the other. But since there's no ground when you're flying in the middle of the air, you still have to find a place to dump those electrons, and you can apparently just dump them out into the exhaust of your jet and create these effects. So Peter said, yes, pal.
Yes. In addition to gravity, don't we also have to account for the entropy?
Entropy. Oh, I see you have a question about what is entropy. So why do you think entropy has to be accounted for in this kind of gravity effect?
Well, not only gravity. I'm saying it's applicable universally. Just as gravity is everywhere, so is entropy everywhere. And you can, even to solve the gravity problem, there's still the entropy problem. That means everything will run down. And so the hypotheses about perpetual motion are meaningless. Am I making sense or making sense?
Well, you're saying that everything should run down, so you're doubting whether a perpetual motion machine can be made?
Not only that, I'm even doubting what other people have said about the solar system, that it is a perpetual motion.
That you think that even the solar system will eventually run down? I mean, theoretically. Yeah, go ahead. What
I think entropy applies to everything. Whether we can, believe it or not. But the rate at which the entropy applies is quite different in the things of the nature than in the things man-made. So man-made things have a much more crucial limitation, whereas nature has entropy, but it is so minuscule, maybe even infinitesimal, but it's still there. So eventually, in theory, the universe should also ought to run out. But there are probably people who will vehemently disagree with me, and some will never be sure like me.
Well, I would say that as humans, we're one of the few things that can reverse entropy. If I just let my house go and if you have a bunch of kids, that's entropy, that everything will get messier and messier and messier. Now the question is, does your house get just infinitely messy? And the thing is no, it doesn't, because eventually you have to go back through and clean your house and reverse the entropy and make things neater. And so you can always reverse entropy at a cost of energy. So you can harvest energy from the sun, and you can use that energy to cause reverse entropy. So entropy is not something that you cannot defeat, and that will always happen. You can always do work and reverse entropy, in my opinion.
Right. Entropy is only applicable to a closed system. If it's an open system, then you can put energy through the system, and the system will become more ordered and decrease entropy.
Yeah, exactly. That we can always take outside energy and reverse entropy. Now, my opinion is on perpetual motion machines is that what you would really be looking for is a way to harvest the ambient energy. Like the room that I'm sitting in is at about 70 degrees, and there's actually a lot of energy in that room temperature. The molecules are running around at something like 3,000 miles per hour. So there's plenty of energy available here to, say, charge my cell phone. But the problem is that in order to harvest energy, typically you have to go from an area of high energy to an area of low energy. There has to be some differential present. Let's see here. Oops, what happened? I think my screen just did something weird here. Just lost my camera or something. Did you guys just see a change in my camera or something? It wants to do annotations or something. Let me see if I can set it. It's like I can draw, but I don't want to do that. How did I get into this mode? I think I'm in whiteboard mode or something. Well, there's my picture again. Let's see here. I am not quite sure what happened there. Why is it?
There seems to be a bar at the top left, maybe with white and black. To the top left of the screen, it's appeared.
Well, I see the record button there. I don't want to hit that. Oh, someone else is sharing. Did someone else share something?
No, but I have the website.
Okay, so now I put that website back. Now, if I stop the sharing, okay, then I came back. Because apparently someone else opted to share their screen, and we were looking at that. So, we have a question from Peter Parker here about whether we believe in aliens. Now, we did have an earlier discussion about that when we started up, when we first starting up the meeting. I was talking with Ian about, how do they build these megalithic structures. And there's the popular show Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, which is really all about that theory that it was some alien race that was used to create these megalithic structures and things like the pyramids, and that they possessed anti-gravity large structures. I mean, that reminds me that there is one modern megalithic structure called the Coral Castle, and that's in Florida, which is apparently built by this skinny little guy, single person. But this thing contains like blocks which weigh, several tons. And not only did he build it once, but he decided to just move it, all those tons. And, no one pretty much saw him really do it. But once again, he was able to move all this stuff by himself, apparently without the use of any special equipment. So I'm kind of wondering why, this guy that doesn't mention the Crystal Castle in his book here, because that is definitely a example. Let me see. Let me look in the index here. See whether he mentions that. No. That there is some kind of anti-gravitational technology in use by that guy, and perhaps by the ancients, or if you believe in the ancient, it was the aliens who did that. So, do we believe in aliens? Well, I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of aliens because I've not seen or interacted. But we see a lot of evidence that perhaps they exist. Now but the topics of aliens is also part of this book. I mean, one of the assertions is that all of these alien UFO observations may in fact just be black ops government programs. A bit about that. So, we're saying that we've got some of these from the aliens, like von Braun, United States space program said basically we had help from the aliens. So that was his claim. It's pretty remarkable that we went from practically nothing to building a rocket that goes to the moon in a matter of a decade. How is that possible to go from nothing to being able to launch a rocket to the moon successfully in such a short amount of time? That kind of implies that maybe we had some help, or maybe just really, really smart. But if that were true, then why did we go through all the trouble of building these large chemical rockets when obviously we could use electrogravity methods to go into space? So that would be my other questions, why did they build these rockets? But in any case, getting back to the B-2 bomber, so they're saying that the B-2 bomber is in fact an electrogravity edge is positively charged, like that charge. And there are claims that when people touch the B-2 bomber, they'll get shocked of condensation around the B-2. And this is a black and white picture, but they claim that cloud around it appears to actually be electrified and actually glowing, is the claim. So while this thing is running, it may be in fact highly charged, and may explain some of the operational characteristics of the B-2 bomber. So perhaps these secrets in our production airplanes. So maybe not.
I heard a theory about the origin of Earth and origin of the man on Earth was some kind of... Yeah.
So, but you had a question about the origin of Earth and the origin of man.
The life from Earth, not from Adam and Eve, but from some alien who brought them, of course, developed into full-fledged now how we got, including you and me. Huh? I'm breaking up?
Now you're breaking up, although I think from somewhere else there. In speculation. I mean, lately I've been binge watching Battlestar Galactica, and that's the whole idea. I mean, that's that life here began out there, and that life was actually hid by some alien race. And once again, that is the ancient alien hypothesis. Some people think that the aliens came here, that they needed a workforce, and directed their human beings so that we could be their slaves and do whatever they want. Of course, if that were the case, then we should still be the enslaved race that they designed us to be. So maybe it's a good thing that, we're not an alien with digging for gold. That's just shiny. Yep. So they did it actually in there, concentrating the gold, and later on they'll come by and take it all away. But that is certainly one that people have had. Maybe it's why we are always reduced speed getting out in space or whatnot. If human beings were suddenly able to go, just anywhere, that'd be like your hamsters escaping the cage and running around your house, right? Okay, so there's another section here, section 7, about microwave propulsion. And this is just the idea that you create a tight microwave beam and you aim it at something and it pushes it, which I think is a fairly straightforward thing. I'm sure that probably works. Let's see if I get any pictures of this here. And microwave phase conjugation here. So, for example, what's a picture of a... let's see here. I can't see. The problem is I can't see the picture because... Oh, there we go. Because I kind of have to cover up my camera in order to do this. But, we have a UFO, and it's got some beams coming out of it, and they are saying that that is how UFO propulsion is done. So he mentions things about Tesla, and once again, Browns. And they mention that these things can get into runaway mode, which could cause them to explode. So that would be the problem here. So then section 9 is unconventional flying objects. And I believe, like I said, this is where they claim that a lot of these things are actually devices created by the United States. But they do mention, the Roswell incident here. So they think that, and they think that the aliens actually did arrive, and there is some memos here indicating that they're really taking that seriously. So are there aliens? Well, Roswell may have happened, right?
Incredible people have testified even before the Congress that there are aliens. That they experienced them. Am I still breaking up? I don't know which song.
Oh, we heard you there. So you said that there have been people that they've seen aliens. I haven't heard about that stuff. Is suppressed. I mean, definitely, like the former head of the Canadian Defense, it's clearly stated that we do know a lot more about the aliens, that they are there. That was one of the most public ones that I've recently heard, them declaring that, yeah, we know this, we know about the aliens, we know about the alien technology, and that we're just all keeping it hush, hush, right? So it's up to us dissident scientists to research this and bring it out in the open, because no one else will. Although if you try to, you may find out your laboratory gets burned down or something horrible happens to you.
Where is the money?
Always seems to be the case.
It's money. But this is
It takes money.
small technicality.
Well, I think the money would find you. I don't think that would be a problem. Although you do have to get enough money to actually do your successful experiments. But that's another area of controversy, because there have been a lot of, say, charlatans who claim to be able to do stuff, and people give them money to try and do it. But so where's my anti-gravity car then, right? Still don't got it, right? So I think for sure, no one's been able to defeat gravity in an economically viable way. Because I think if they did, we would have seen it by now. Now, there is a mention here about Bob Lazar, and Bob Lazar is like the famous case, Area 51, where reverse engineer the crowd that he was examining. And these things theoretically have these gravity projectors. And it can project either an A gravity or a B gravity. So the A gravity would be attractive, the B gravity would be repelling. So depending on how you turn these things on and off, you can get the spacecraft to move in different directions. So you would like aim these three beams, and if you wanted to go forward, you just put more force on the back ones and less force on the front ones, and then basically the craft would fall forward. Due to these beam gravitators. So that's explained, on these pictures here. So that's one of the anti-gravity secrets. They explain how the UFOs work here. Of course, has anyone been able to create such a thing? Maybe the United States government has, but we have not readily seen this sort of thing available.
Franklin, just some questions have occurred to me as you've been speaking about La Voilette. I don't have in my possession. But I see, how does he make a living? Can you hear me?
See here, you're breaking it. Yeah, I think I have to turn off my camera. My bandwidth is limited. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So my questions were just a little more information about the author, La Voilette. I'm just wondering what he does for a living. I mean, is he merely an author of these books? And in conjunction with that, how has he obtained all this secret information about what is happening in NASA and what's happening in the defense forces and so on? If so, he is in danger because he has confidential information which he's promulgated. One other thing that occurred to me when you read one or two of those quotations is that he's not sort of like a post-Einsteinian in the sense that he talked about the ether theory and absolute space. He seemed to be going back to Lorentz theory because he's accepting length contraction and time dilation, but he's accepting an absolute etheric space at the same time. So I don't know if you can throw any light on those from the blurb on the book.
Well, what does the back say here? See, he is the president of the Starburst Foundation, an interdisciplinary research institute, and holds advanced degrees in systems science and physics. The author of Genesis of the Cosmos, Earth Under Fire, Decoding the Message of the pulsars and subquantum kinetics. He lives in New York. So that was probably the Starburst Foundation is probably his own foundation here. So I'm looking at, I'm trying to Google him to see what else he does here. And I'm not seeing a whole heck of a lot here, other than he's the author of this book. So,
I mean, sometimes you find that, there are a lot of interesting ideas and hypotheses given by writers such as this, but frequently they're short on objective evidence, as you say, repeatability, and sometimes they're a bit self-serving, just promoting their own wares. So I'm just a little skeptical. I'm just asking these questions just for a bit of background.
Yeah, so it looks like this guy, just like any one of us, which is, that's basically just an independent researcher. And as far as where he gets the information for this, so apparently he's done a few of his own interviews, like the B2 stuff. He's got some connections. But a lot of the other stuff, like T.T. Brown's work, Tesla's work, is commonly found on the internet. So, like many books, this is an aggregator of information which is already pretty available on other sources. All this stuff about Bob Lazar. You can go read about that in other places. So, in some ways, other than the stuff he's revealed from his own personal interviews, there aren't any other, secrets that you probably couldn't find someplace else. Like probably you might have been able to see probably you could probably see most of it, I would have to say. I mean, I have seen most of it in other places. So I think that's how I would respond to that. So this guy, he's like a nobody, but he's written this book, and he's got his own foundation, and that's how he does things. So look here. So this is another section here of the Searl effect, which is also another thing that you could easily look up on the internet. I mean, I think a lot of this stuff, with the introduction of the internet, see the source materials for a lot of this stuff. Really, I mean, prior to the invention of the internet, you would have to go to things like books, where they've actually gone and collected and curated all the information. But that's what books are nice for, because
So I'm just going to respond briefly. Things that he needs credentials. I think most of us dissidents would say no. I certainly would say no. I mean, there are people with great credentials on paper, from the mainstream, who are speaking nonsense every single day of the week. So I merely asked the question to see where he was coming from. And, of course, dissidents are not any less likely to be self-serving, so I was just really asking the question for that basis. But no, I don't think he would need any orthodox credentials. And it also seems to me, from what you've read, that he's actually not a true dissident. He seems to be accepting the fundamentals of modern physics in a way that most of us would probably question.
Yeah, that may be. He says he has advanced degrees in system science and physics. So perhaps more than the most standard dissidents. But let's see here. So I don't know if you guys heard about the Searl effect, but apparently this is some kind of generator. And one day when he was playing around with this thing, it apparently lifted off and hit the ceiling. You're going, okay, well, not only can this thing generate energy, but it has something to do with anti-gravity. So this is a series of rollers with magnetized rollers going in opposite directions. But let's see, here's a more detailed picture of the Searl here. And I think I have seen people attempting to, replicate these things. Right? I wonder if I go do a quick search here on YouTube on the Searl effect, whether I would see something. Because everything is on YouTube these days. Absolutely. And fix my radiator on my car, and then I'll go look up on YouTube, and it's like there's like 3 or 4 videos on how to replace the radiator on my exact model year car. Right? So, yes, everything can be found on YouTube. So let me see, Searl effect. I bet you there's a lot of videos on that. So let's see, let me just share my desktop here. So here we have lots of videos, and there's someone doing an update. So a lot of people are trying this stuff here. So here's a video of the UFO that was built and flown by John Searl. There are a lot of people who are making these replicas, but I want to see someone flying this thing. SCG effect demonstrator number 1. So I have no doubt people have been trying to build these things, but that are how do we know whether what these things are, the things we've seen on the YouTube is real or simulated? Well, on YouTube, you never know whether anything's real, really.
That's right.
I mean, there's a lot of fake stuff on YouTube. None of my stuff, mind you. All my stuff is real. But, they show a lot of things. Like, for example, they showed an example of how you can use a cell phone, a CD, and 2 AA's to do levitation. And they show this video, and, you can see this thing levitate, and it's like, you just got to ask, okay, where are the wires? So, no, you can't believe everything you see on YouTube. That this stuff is legit, but I don't know that I've seen, like, for the Searl generator, other than people creating interesting. But that is another section on this book here and how this works. So then they have an experiment. See here, we're on the section here on electrogravitic wave experiments here. And high voltage electrogravitics experiments. So again, so going back to T.T. Brown stuff, they have pictures where, you're supposed to be skepticism from people who have looked at these experiments to indicate whether these things are either being driven entirely just by ion wind or whether it's, like, say, an electrostatic attraction force. And there's a section on black hole discovered at NASA here. I'm not exactly sure what that was about. There's something about the Columbia disaster here. Saying that if Brown's aerospace technology had been implemented on a space shuttle, the Columbia disaster would never have happened. So, I mean, that is an interesting point that if we knew about this kind of technology since the 1950s, then why would we invent and spend billions of dollars on something that looks like the space shuttle? And or why would we not protect it or give it some of these special capabilities? And there's a section here entitled NASA, a military front organization? Perhaps. I mean, this is one of the speculations that, NASA is in on this thing here. I think they have done some honest attempts at replication of these types of things. So that would indicate that, well, maybe NASA's not complicit. And then maybe all of this electrogravity stuff is a bunch of hooey. Who knows? But, I believe the last chapter here is a technology that could change the world. So that's what he's saying, is that if this is true, according to Ray, who was the Black Projects guy that he had spoken to. But he's saying that so apparently the behind-the-scenes individuals who monitor black world research and decide whether or not it stays classified are following a program of controlled evolution. If these powers that be determine that the world has advanced to a point where it can handle a new technology, they will allow it to be introduced. This leaves us with the question of whether this self-chosen group is itself sufficiently qualified to be making these kinds of decisions. With problems like global warming, global deforestation, acid rain, widespread pollution of the oceans, radioactive waste, overpopulation, hunger, and the AIDS epidemic looming ever larger, shouldn't at least some of this knowledge be declassified to help the world? Some members of the Black Program community feel that it should, and as a result, they are making efforts to push things in a more liberal direction. So there you have it. That's what's going on. It's the Illuminati is keeping it down. And I think, that's the basics of the book here. Gravity propulsion. I mean, that's kind of interesting that, maybe there are this group of people who are actually controlling the dissemination of additional knowledge. Now, I kind of feel that, that there may be some kind of global universal rule, like in Star Trek. There is the Prime Directive, which is that you are not to interfere with the evolution of a society. So perhaps if, say, one of us dissidents figures it out, that would be okay. But you're not allowed to get the information directly from the outside alien technologies, perhaps, what might be going on. But so I'm just going to open up for discussion here. So what do people think about that, the things that are discussed in the book here? Antigravity propulsion. Let's see here. We can unmute people if we want. I see we have Cornelius here. So I can mute all, but I can't unmute people. That's interesting. So, Pal, what did you think? I see you've got your microphone open.
It's getting harder and harder for me to separate facts from fiction. And apparently there's almost equal amount of each in every media I look at.
So you don't know what to believe. I mean, I kind of have that same problem.
I don't know what to do. I mean, that's why we have our right moderators. That we can give us words of wisdom here and there when we are so inspired.
It's like, the question was asked, do we believe in aliens? And it's like, well, I mean, I've never personally run into any, but if you look at all the pictures and all the stories about it, it's like, how could all of that be just made up, right?
No, more importantly, what I'm searching for is a process or an algorithm or something to sort out facts from fiction. What method do I use?
Well, I guess that gets into the philosophy of science, in that typically we would, have some kind of hypothesis on something, like, how gravity works. And so, like for T.T. Brown's work, he's saying that we can get these anti-gravitational effects by using electricity. And then we would have to do experiments that would only be true if their hypothesis were true. But, I mean, this is a philosophical question of how do we decide anything is true or false. You know, in the court of law, we have two opposing sides just give their arguments, and then a jury decides. But, you know, jury could be wrong.
You know, Franklin, to be honest with you, I'm not interested in specific hypotheses, whether they are in science or religion or any field. I'm searching for a genetic process to sort out fact and fiction.
Well, that goes into logic, I suppose, because usually what people do to try and sort out fact and fiction, well, I don't know. When you think about it, fiction can sometimes be very convincing. You know, if you go into like the entire fictional world of, say, Star Wars, you know, all of that would seem to say make logical sense. You know, they have things where they can, you know, go faster than light. They have lightsabers. They have all kinds of technology which seems to make sense. So it wouldn't seem to be, it would be kind of difficult to say that, you know, that is false versus what we have in the real world. We have things like aircraft carriers and jet planes and bullets. We know that that's true versus spaceships and ion beam weapons and faster than light travel, right?
I think I'm still not communicating with you properly because you keep going back to some knowledge domain, whether it is logic or philosophy or something. I want to stay away from the known knowledge domain. Independent of any knowledge domain, there has to be a process to sort out facts from fiction, truth from lies. Maybe
Well, I guess that's the question of the universe, right?
Yes, it's a question that has been bothering me for almost 5 decades now.
Maybe Ian, maybe you have some thoughts on that. I mean, is there some method we can universally apply to separate fact from fiction?
Who are you asking? Ask for Harry Whitman. I think he might have some idea.
I think maybe Ian has something to say about this.
Well, yes, I've been thinking about it as you've been discussing it, and Pal has been making his points. And the earlier question about whether one believes in aliens or not, I mean, my quick response to these things, I think, is similar to yours, Franklin. I neither believe nor disbelieve. I mean, I accept that many things are possible. You know, it's possible that aliens came and started civilization here and so on and so forth. But I will not believe it until I have incontrovertible evidence. Now, the difficulty there is that I'm being skeptical about everything. But you see, that I believe is a safer philosophical position than credulity, because credulity is what primitive man has, or, you know, unsophisticated people. They just accept everything. They're confused about the world and they just want to accept an explanation. So they accept certain things that appear maybe outside our normal everyday experience. And that leads to credulity, just, you know, accepting things just because they say so. So I would need some very hard, repeatable and testable evidence to accept any of these phenomena. However, I don't dismiss them out of hand. I mean, it is quite possible that, for example, the megalithic tombs were put up. You have crystalline forms of rock in the structure, and they were saying that if you have the sort of a crystal transmitter, which can tune into the natural frequency of those crystals, you could get the rocks to levitate, and that's the way the megalithic monuments were constructed. Now that is possible, but I'm not going to believe it until I have pretty incontrovertible evidence. So I suppose my plea is really for one of skepticism, whilst holding an open mind on all these phenomena. I don't know if that answers your question about my position.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we do have like some explanations from the ancients about how these things work. I mean, we can work that with our modern explanations. For example, when you mention that there's a crystal structure, and that if you hit it with the right frequency, that you can perhaps get it to become anti-gravitational. So, like, I can work that kind of with my own theories, because I believe that the gravity itself is just a simple electrostatic attraction, in that the Earth is positively charged, and therefore the dipoles or crystals, for example, must all be pointing in one direction towards the Earth. So the idea being that if you want to take any object and make it anti-gravitational, you have to break static force between the dipoles and the charge. And the one way of doing that is if you take the dipole and if it's pointing downward, like it always should be, then you make it point like this way, 0, and you can get the dipole to either point in a sideways direction or basically any other direction other than its natural direction, which is down. So if you were to sit there and just vibrate, anything such that you could mess up the electrostatic attraction, then perhaps you might be able to get an effect like that. But that's kind of like how I might, fit in some information like that about like how these megalithic structures perhaps are oriented. So I still have to come up with my anti-gravity gun, which does exactly that, which goes and messes up the orientation of the dipoles in any object, and then causes them to levitate. So that's on my to-do list. I just wrote that down. Create anti-gravitational gun. But that's just an example where how we can get some ideas and how things. But what do you think of the contents of the book? Ian has already kind of pointed out that a lot of this stuff is already relatively available on the internet. Maybe Artie, I was kind of wondering, what did you think of the contents of the book? Is it something you might be interested in? You can go out and buy the book? Do you think B-2 bomber?
Who am I to say it? They aren't. I don't know if I'm going to go out and buy the book. I got a lot of books I'm behind reading now. So I do. I guess I'm of the theory that the UFOs are actually somebody here on Earth actually figured this out, and maybe it's our government. I suspect it might be, and that's nothing to do with aliens. I don't believe. I think it's just technology here on Earth that we haven't been shared yet. And that's fine. That's I think there's a lot of things the government doesn't tell us.
Yeah, I'm thinking my own personal opinion on this is that, I'm fairly convinced by the stuff from Bob Lazar, who says that, there were aliens who crashed, and that we reverse engineered their technology, but that a lot of the things that we do see as UFOs are things that the United States government has actually built based on trying to reverse engineer some of this technology. So that's Bob Lazar's claim. So I would think that would make the most plausible sense to me, I would imagine. But in any case, I think unless one of us can levitate one of our automobiles off the ground, that no one's going to really believe anything that we say. So no one should believe me. No one should believe anything that Paul says until we can actually get the rubber off the road, I think, is what we'd have to do. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of the conference here. So I think I'm going to do a little summary here, unless anyone else has any questions. So we have been talking about this book, The Secrets of Antigravity Propulsion. And I believe a lot of it did have to do with the idea that gravity is related to electricity. And really, actually, not so much anti-gravity, because it's more of an electric effect. I mean, a lot of T.T. Brown's work, it would work in any direction, as it doesn't necessarily negate gravity. But so a lot of content in this book is along those lines. And the other significant thing is that they're saying is that he did his own interviews with this guy called Ray. So he got a lot of inside information about how the United States government does being actively suppressed because we're just not ready for it. And but this technology has been incorporated into some of our modern aircraft, like the B-2 bomber. Theoretically shows evidence of having incorporated in order to get special performance characteristics. Things like, perhaps hovering or something. But he also mentions the UFO technology. For example, we start talking about Bob Lazar and his claims that we reverse engineered UFO technology. But that the aliens are here. And that people saying that, yeah, the aliens are here, and that they have the technology, and we've got a lot of problems on the Earth here that might be solved by using that technology. Or maybe we'll just blow ourselves up. It's one of those Pandora's box things. I mean, once that's out, you can't put that back in, and what would people use it for? Maybe they would use it for weapons. Who knows? That's what tends to be happens to all technology. You never know what it's going to get used for, or its ultimate end. So let's see here. On the Searl effect mentioned in here, but I think probably the most interesting thing here is this is why he has a B-2 bomber on his cover. That perhaps the B-2 bomber uses these All right. Well, thank you. I think that will do it for this week's. Other topics that you would like to discuss, please yahoo.com. And that will do it for